Valladolid had been the capital of Spain for a short period, but much of the history of Spain as it became a united nation was played out here and in the surrounding towns and villages on the plateau of Castile known as the Meseta. Valladolid lies at an altitude of 700 metres above sea level, 2,300 feet. Because Castile is a tableland, the word meseta comes from the Spanish for table, and in places is very flat, as far as the eye can see. And because the main crops are wheat and grape, Catholic culture there has led people to speak of Castile as an immense altar. In my time as a student, the college was the only Scots seminary which was in the middle of a town. The blue lines in the photo shows our narrow frontage dwarfed by higher buildings. We were 5 minutes away from the Plaza Mayor, the main square, and many historic buildings were close to hand. The cathedral, the 12th century church of Santa Maria la Antigua, the oldest church in the city, which had been the parish church of Christopher Columbus, whose final years were spent in Valladolid, and the church of San Pablo, whose facade had been used by Napoleon's troops for target practice. Our college superiors encouraged us to learn Spanish well and to get to know Spain, its history, geography and culture, and the church in another land. We had ample opportunity in 6 years to see most of the country. Avila, St. Teresa's town, was an hour and a half away. Its well-preserved medieval walls made it a United Nations World Heritage Site. And its annual fair was a colourful experience when everybody and anybody could wander around in medieval costume. Segovia, where St. John of the Cross is buried, was a day's outing, notable for its Disney-like castle known as the Alcázar, and the Roman aqueduct, which is still supplying water to the city today. Astorga to the northwest had Roman walls, and the Bishop's Palace, designed by the Catalan architect Antoni Gaudí, now a candidate for canonisation. It was only ever used as a museum, promoting the pilgrim routes to Santiago de Compostela, burial place of the Apostle St. James the Greater, where he is honoured with the swinging of the outsized thurible, the Botafumeiro. Here you see some pilgrims arriving who will have walked several hundred miles. Gaudí's hometown, Barcelona, on the east coast, is home to several of his creations, most notably the Sagrada Familia Basilica, which is due for completion in 2026. And 25 miles to the north is the Benedictine Abbey of Montserrat, which traces its origins to the 11th century and is well worth a visit. Spaniards are fond of street theatre, the beggar doing acrobatic stunts, the university students' musical group, the Tuna, roaming the streets and squares in 17th century costume, playing some instruments of that time, and singing traditional love songs, often serenading a young woman at the request of her boyfriend. Here you see some other street musicians in Santiago for the Feast of St. James. Undoubtedly, the highest form of street theatre is the Holy Week processions. Here are some views I took on a Palm Sunday in the early 1970s. Simply visiting local villages was an education in itself. For 2 months of the summer, we lived on the edge of one, Boethilio by name, a few miles south of Valladolid, in the house you will see on the screen. built by one of our rectors in the late 1790s. Not long after that, in 1812, the Duke of Wellington requisitioned it as a command post during the Peninsular War. It was a very simple place, quite basic, might even say primitive. Some visitors could be taken aback at the advice to shake their shoes carefully in the morning in case a scorpion had got in the night time. 50 years later, I still give my shoes a gentle tap in the morning. Old habits die hard. One visitor had the experience of an insect falling from the ceiling into his soup. Only a couple of hours after he had arrived, he was unfamiliar with the place. And that was followed by the experience of seeing a snake slithering down the stairs as he went upstairs after his supper. That was some welcome. In Boethilio, after the exams, we lived a more relaxed timetable with opportunities to study other things, like learning to play the guitar, which I never did yet. But I did learn to swim in the local River Douro, or Douro, to give it its better known Portuguese name. It was, though, above all, a time for mending fences with each other, of strengthening the community. Community was very important to us.